The hospital corridor was filled with the low hum of machines, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes, and the quiet cries of newborns echoing behind closed doors. For most families, this place symbolized hope, relief, and new beginnings. But for her, it had become a battlefield. She sat on the edge of the hospital bed, pale and exhausted after hours of labor, her arms aching for the child she had just brought into the world. Instead of warmth and support, she faced cold eyes and a sharp voice that cut through the room like a blade. Her mother-in-law stood near the door, arms crossed tightly, her posture rigid with judgment. From the moment she arrived, she had made it clear that she did not approve of this woman, of this marriage, or of the child now sleeping in the nursery. Her words were not loud, but they were precise and cruel, each sentence carefully chosen to wound. She accused the young mother of trapping her son, of being weak, of bringing shame instead of joy. Nurses passed by, pretending not to hear, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. "You shouldn't even be here," the older woman finally snapped, her voice trembling with barely restrained anger. "Once you're discharged, don't come back to our house. You're rushing to the wrong station if you think you belong in this family." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. The young mother felt her throat tighten. She had imagined many things while pregnant: fear, pain, uncertainty, but not this level of rejection at her most vulnerable moment. Tears welled in her eyes, though she fought to keep them from falling. She had nowhere to go. Her own parents lived far away, and her husband was stuck at work, unaware of the storm unfolding in his absence. The mother-in-law took her silence as defeat and turned toward the door, as if the matter were settled. That was when footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady and confident, growing closer with every second. The door opened, and the room seemed to change temperature instantly. The unexpected guest was not someone the mother-in-law had anticipated. He stepped inside calmly, his presence commanding without a single raised voice. His eyes moved from the exhausted young woman on the bed to the older woman near the door, and then back again. Recognition flashed across the mother-in-law's face, and all the sharp words she had prepared seemed to vanish at once. He spoke slowly, deliberately, asking what was going on. The young mother could barely speak through her tears, but she didn't have to. The tension in the room told the story. When the mother-in-law tried to explain herself, her confidence faltered. The guest listened without interruption, then responded with quiet authority, reminding her that this hospital room was not a courtroom and that cruelty had no place where new life had just begun. His words were not insulting, but they were firm, and they left no room for argument. For the first time since she arrived, the mother-in-law had nothing to say. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She looked away, suddenly aware of how small her power was in that moment. The guest turned to the young mother, reassuring her gently, promising that she was not alone and that no one had the right to cast her aside. Relief washed over her like a wave, and she finally allowed herself to cry, not from humiliation but from release. As the older woman quietly left the room, the silence felt different now. It was no longer threatening. It was peaceful. The young mother leaned back against the pillows, breathing deeply, holding onto the knowledge that someone had stood up for her when she could not stand at all. Elsewhere, in a brightly lit television studio miles away, tension of a different kind was unfolding. What began as a routine interview on a popular daytime talk show had taken an unexpected turn. Ledisi sat across from Kelly Clarkson, her posture relaxed at first, her voice warm as she spoke about music, life, and growth. The audience smiled, expecting laughter and inspiration. But the tone shifted when the questions became sharper, more personal, edging into territory that felt less like curiosity and more like provocation. Ledisi answered politely at first, choosing her words carefully. But as the conversation continued, it became clear that something was off. A comment was made, dismissive, perhaps unintentional, but deeply cutting. The room felt quiet, the kind of silence that signals discomfort rather than anticipation. Ledisi's expression changed. She paused, took a breath, and addressed the comment directly, explaining why it crossed a line. Kelly attempted to smooth things over, but the damage was done. For Ledisi, it wasn't about ego or drama, it was about respect. She had worked too hard and endured too much to be reduced or misunderstood on a public stage. Her voice remained calm, but her resolve was unmistakable. She stood up slowly, thanked the audience, and made it clear that she would not continue a conversation that felt dismissive of her truth. Gasps rippled through the studio as she walked off set. Cameras followed for a moment, then cut away. Viewers at home flooded social media with reactions, some shocked, some supportive, many debating whether the moment was justified. But for Ledisi, the decision was simple. Silence in the face of disrespect was no longer an option. In both places, the hospital room and the television studio, the same lesson unfolded in different ways. Vulnerability does not grant others permission to wound. Power does not belong solely to those who shout the loudest. Sometimes it lives in the quiet decision to stand up, to walk away, or to speak when silence would only deepen the hurt. For the young mother, the unexpected guest changed the course of a moment that could have broken her. For Ledisi, leaving the stage was a declaration that dignity matters more than airtime. In both stories, boundaries were drawn, and the weight of unspoken pain was finally lifted. And in that shift, something powerful happened. A reminder that even in the most intimidating spaces, respect can still reclaim the room. The maternity ward was supposed to be a place of quiet joy, where exhaustion mixed with relief and the first fragile moments of a new life were protected from the outside world. Instead, the room felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were pressing inward. The young woman lay propped up against white pillows, her body weak after childbirth, her mind fogged by pain and disbelief. She had imagined holding her baby, hearing soft reassurances, maybe even seeing pride in her family's eyes. What she got instead was rejection delivered with surgical precision. Her mother-in-law stood beside the bed, lips tight, eyes sharp with long-held resentment. There was no warmth in her gaze, no curiosity about the woman who had just endured hours of labor. She spoke as though this moment were an inconvenience, something to be dealt with and dismissed. Each sentence landed like a slap, accusing the young mother of ruining her son's life, of being unworthy of the family name, of expecting support she did not deserve. The words, "You don't belong," echoed louder than anything else. When the older woman told her she should leave as soon as she was discharged, that she was rushing to the wrong station, if she thought there was a place for her in their home, something inside the young mother cracked. She stared at the blanket covering her legs, afraid that if she looked up, the tears would spill uncontrollably. The nurses moved in and out, glancing awkwardly, bound by protocol and uncertainty, leaving the cruelty unchecked. She felt abandoned in the most literal sense. Her husband was absent, her phone silent, and her strength gone. The mother-in-law, satisfied that her message had been delivered, turned toward the door as if closing a chapter. That was when the door opened again, interrupting the finality of her exit. The unexpected guest stepped in without hesitation. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere, as if the air had been rearranged. He didn't rush or raise his voice, he didn't need to. His calm carried authority. He took in the scene quickly, the trembling young woman, the rigid older figure, the tension thick enough to touch. When he asked what was happening, his tone made it clear that evasion would not work. The mother-in-law attempted to justify herself, but her words stumbled. The certainty she'd displayed moments earlier began to crumble. The guest listened, then responded with measured clarity. He spoke about compassion, about timing, about how cruelty revealed more about the speaker than the target. He reminded her that power exercised without empathy was not power at all. With each sentence, her posture shrank, her voice fading until she fell silent. She had been rendered speechless, stripped of control by nothing more than truth and presence. Without another word, she left the room. The young mother exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The guest turned to her, offering reassurance without pity, reminding her that she mattered, that this moment did not define her future. In his quiet support, she found enough strength to believe him. Far away from the hospital's sterile halls, another confrontation was unfolding under bright studio lights. The setting was polished, the smiles rehearsed, the energy designed to feel welcoming. Ledisi sat across from Kelly Clarkson, initially relaxed, sharing stories about her music and journey. The conversation flowed smoothly, laughter rippling through the audience. But beneath the surface, tension began to build. A comment landed wrong. It wasn't shouted or overtly cruel, but it carried a dismissive edge that stung deeply. Ledisi's smile faded as she processed what had been said. She paused, allowing the silence to stretch. In that moment, the power dynamics of television were laid bare, the expectation to smile through discomfort, to keep things light no matter the cost. Ledisi chose differently. She addressed the remark directly, her voice steady but firm. She explained why it hurt, why it mattered, why it couldn't be brushed aside as harmless banter. The audience shifted in their seats. Kelly attempted to redirect, to soften the moment, but the line had already been crossed. What followed was not explosive, but it was decisive. Ledisi stood up, thanked the audience, and made it clear that she would not continue in a space where her experience felt minimized. She walked off the set, leaving behind stunned faces and unanswered questions. Within minutes, the moment ignited online, dissected and debated from every angle. Some viewers criticized her, calling the walk-off dramatic. Others praised her for setting boundaries in an industry that often punishes those who do. But for Ledisi, the choice was not about public opinion. It was about self-respect. She had spent years carving out her voice, refusing to let it be reshaped by others' expectations. Walking away was not defeat, it was alignment. In both stories, the settings were different, one intimate and raw, the other public and polished, but the core was the same. A woman was pushed to the edge, tested in her vulnerability. And in each case, the response shifted the narrative. Silence was replaced by presence. Submission gave way to self-worth. The young mother did not suddenly gain all the answers, but she gained something just as important, the knowledge that she was not powerless. Ledisi did not finish the interview, but she finished the moment on her own terms. These were not loud victories. They were quiet, resolute ones. And sometimes, those are the moments that linger longest, when someone refuses to be erased, when dignity steps into the room and everything else falls silent.